You've probably heard about the extraordinary free market successes of Javier Milei in Argentina, where his small government policies have seen a plunge in the inflation rate, they've seen a collapse in poverty, and he's been producing the first fiscal surpluses for many, many years. Well, I recently had the good fortune of spending 2 weeks there, where I interviewed a range of fascinating people, including government ministers. I do hope you enjoy.
Well, I am sitting here with Miguel Boggiano, who is a top economist and top financial advisor in Argentina. He's a former finance professor. He is a well-known champion of President Milei's reforms. And mercifully, he studied at the University of Chicago, so that means he speaks English extremely well. Thank you very much for meeting with me.
Thanks, Evan.
Can we first talk about the election result that we had on the weekend?
Sure.
It was a surprise, it was extraordinary. Milei's party got 41%, I believe, of the primary vote. Was that a surprise to you, firstly? And then what does it mean for the country?
Well, it was a surprise, and you can see that by the market's reaction, right? So equities markets shot up like 40%, 32% on Monday alone, and by the end of the week, I think it was somewhere around 50 or 55% up on the week.
That's the Argentinian market, the index.
The index.
Amazing.
That's the
Amazing.
index. Some banks were almost 100% up.
Amazing.
And bond market was shooting up as well. So I would say most of the sovereign bonds are now at the highs of the year, and the MB index of JP Morgan, I think it's at 650, something like that now, maybe a little lower. That measures this difference between what's the cost for a country to borrow and the cost for the U.S. There's something very important about the results, and that has to do with the way the results have been presented, right? So La Libertad Avanza got 41%, almost 41%, but they are presenting the Peronism or the Kirchnerism as the second with 31%, and that's something that at least one can beg to disagree. And the reason for that is because they're adding up different parties that are, let's say, close to Peronism, but not exactly that. So if you only take into account the Kirchnerism, that number goes down to 25%. And someone may say, okay, it doesn't really matter, it doesn't change much, but it does. Because with these numbers, if we were in 2027, Milei would have been re-elected on the first round. Because in Argentina, if you get above 45%, you're president.
Mm-hmm.
If you get above 40% and the next party gets below 30, if it's 10 points below whatever you get, then you're president as well. So in this case, La Libertad Avanza got 41, so it was above 40, and the difference was about almost 15 points, right?
Yeah,
so, and that's something that is, on a theoretical level, that would imply that he would have been re-elected. Obviously, there's a really long way to go because there's 2 years ahead, but I would say that the likelihood of President Milei being re-elected has seriously gone up.
No, that's fantastic. So he was obviously being rewarded by voters for something. What was the biggest achievement in these first 2 years, in your view?
Well, inflation and poverty, obviously, they're closely related. When you lower inflation, and then what happens is that basically poor people are able to buy a group of goods, right, that are bundled together in what's called like canasta básica, and that's a mix of goods and services that if you can achieve that group of goods, you're not considered poor, right? So when inflation goes down, there's more people are able to achieve that set of goods. And when he got into office, poverty was at about 43%. On first semester, it shot up to 54%. Now it's below 30%.
Extraordinary.
And another point really relevant here is that food inflation has been below the average inflation. So this year we will end up probably somewhere around 25%, and good inflation and food inflation will be somewhere around 20%. So, poor people spend about half their budget in food. So it's really, really important, and it has a high impact if that group of goods can have an inflation that is at least a little lower than the average, right?
Was there any evidence that the turnout from poorer sections of the community was higher voting? Like, so has the support for Milei shifted to poorer people from elites?
I guess so. I don't have the numbers, but Buenos Aires province is about a very good sample of that. He was able to win the Buenos Aires province by a small margin, but still. And I would say that most of the poor people are living in Buenos Aires province. I guess more than half of the poor people in the country, my guess is that they're there in Buenos Aires province.
So just still on inflation, and just for viewers at home, I think rates in Argentina were something like 300% last year, and now the annual rate's fallen to 30-ish, 30 something.
More like 25.
More 25. Where do you see it going from here? I mean, is it possible that next year it could go down to 3-4%, like the levels in Australia, or
not 3% on an annual basis, but the estimates are about somewhere around 10% on an annual basis. So we're going to be from last year, I think it was 250%, 25. Next year probably around 10. And then I guess if I have to guess, 2027 will be around 7 maybe. It's really hard to say, but we're definitely going in a regime in which inflation continues to go down. And the reason for that is because basically we don't have any fiscal deficit, and central government is not issuing money. It's probably, if there's one law in economics that behaves really close to physics, it has to do with the monetary definition of inflation, right? If you issue more money, you will get more inflation. It's a quantitative theory of money, right? That, as I said, it's like a physics relationship. You print more money, you get more inflation. It's a linear thing. It's a fact tested. Different countries all over the world, so cross-section, and also the same country throughout the years. So it's both time series and cross-section. That is complete. It's a proven fact. it's a proven fact that if you issue more money, if you print more money, you will get more inflation. And believe me, we learned that the rough way.
Yes.
But I think people really know that that's the fact.
I mean, certainly you're right that the reduction in inflation has been amazing, incredible. I don't think it's happened for many decades in Argentina. You've had levels this low. Why didn't previous presidents do this?
Well, because in order to do that, you need to cut expenses. So, do you know how many countries in the world have fiscal surplus?
Very few.
Three.
Okay.
Between very few and three, it's really very few. And the reason for that is because politicians just love to spend, and I would say in developed countries they are able to spend borrowing money. So the effects of inflation are, I would say, masquerade behind that idea of debt. But if you cannot borrow, then you need to print money, right? And we were in that situation. So when you get there, it's pretty obvious that what you're doing has an effect. But many countries in the world are running serious deficits. The US is one of those. Europe, France, and many other countries. And if you think about this, in order to be able to have one common currency as a euro, they had to comply with the Maastricht treaties in 1994. And that had goals in terms of debts ratio and fiscal deficits. And now they are apparently forgetting about that. So there's slowly a divergence between the political economies of different members of the European Union, and that will have consequences, but that's another story, right?
Just in terms of inflation and currency still, there was some talk from Milei that he would abolish the peso and use US dollars like in Ecuador. Is that still a prospect? Is that still something the government wants to do?
Well, in order to do that, you need to have the dollars, and the government doesn't have those dollars, right? There are some people that claim that it would suffice to only have the equivalent of the monetary base. And the problem with that is that Argentina is a country in which people really have they don't trust the government. So let me tell you what would happen if they say, okay, now all your deposits have magically transformed into dollars. You know what they would do? Say, show me the dollars.
Yes, exactly.
And if that's the case, it's not enough to have only the monetary base. You need to have the whole financial system, maybe the M3. Imagine that if everyone that has deposits say, okay, give me my dollars, I want to see them. I just want to see them. Then I'm gonna put them back in the system.
So it's never going to happen then. M3 is too big.
M3 is probably too big. So it's not some claim that if you have 15 billion, that would be enough. But I think the president is more of the idea, well, I think we need 80 billion.
Yes.
And we don't have those. And the money that the IMF has lent us is not for that. And the US swap is not for that. And, I think we're not in a situation in which someone can seriously discuss the chance of dollarization here.
Fair enough. You mentioned the swap in Australia, and the press I read in the US. Milei's detractors, they say, oh, he only won because he was bailed out by Donald Trump. Is that fair? I mean,
no,
has the swap been used?
It's not, and I don't even agree with the term bailout. This is not a bailout. A bailout is a situation in which you really need money to pay for something, and you get the money. Someone lends you that money. That's not the case here. I think here what you had was a huge panic, a confidence crisis, because there was a chance of another party coming back to power, right? And the proof of that is that, this what we call Viejo País, right? I don't know, the translation is country risk, it's not exactly like that. Last Monday went down from 1,000 to 700, right? So imagine that. Tell me about it. So there was a risk embedded in the system about the chance of Peronism getting back into power. Now you don't have that risk, and that's gone. So there was a serious concern around people getting back in power, and I think that concern has vanished now. So as the Secretary of the Treasury said, Argentina had a liquidity crisis, and that's what the swap provides, liquidity. And the U.S. has provided swap lines at different points in time with Europe as well. I think in 2011, the debt crisis in Europe, where Mario Draghi ended up saying whatever it takes, and the U.S. had huge swap lines with Europe. So it's a liquidity provider for the world, and it's obvious that it has a special relationship with Argentina because Argentina is considered a geopolitical ally of the U.S. And if you see how they vote in the UN, you will realize that the U.S., Argentina, and Israel vote together, I would say, always.
Now, prior to the swap from the United States, there was a loan from the IMF, I believe, to Argentina of 10, 20 billion US dollars, something like that. My question is the IMF forcing Milei to do things that he would not otherwise do with the conditions?
No, they're negotiations, obviously. But I think the discussions were about ways of doing things. The goals were the same, but I think Milei convinced the IMF that he was right about choosing certain policies. He ended up being right. It's a little technical now, but it had to do with the need or not to have like two different exchange rates for exporters. So the IMF didn't like just wanted to have one exchange rate, and that lasted until I think it was April this year. But throughout 2024, that gap was still in place of about 10%, right? The thing is, President Milei received a country that was a serious mess in terms of monetary imbalances and short-term debt that he had to sort out, and he did it without defaulting on any obligation, and that's very unusual.
So I understand Argentina has repayments due next year of some size in US dollars. Is it borrowing at the moment or no? Because as you say, there's a surplus, so it's not currently borrowing on international markets, but it has loans. It has past loans that are still on the books.
Argentina needs to roll its debt next year, and the general anxiety is okay. You need to pay that money back. So, but you're not being able to accumulate international reserves, basically US dollars. So how are you going to do that? And that's still part of the question here. At least that's part of something that it has been criticized. I think the government will be able to do that because now, when uncertainty disappears, then the demand for local currency goes up again. So at some point, they will be able to print money to supply for that recovery in the monetary demand, and being able to transform that excess demand into international reserves.
Now, just on the consequences of the election, in the first 2 years of the presidency, he did not have Congress behind him. He didn't have enough members, didn't have enough votes.
Correct.
But I understand that now it's far more possible to get legislation through on tax, on pensions, on labour market. So what are the big reforms you think will happen first, and the most important ones? And I'm especially interested in tax and labour market.
Okay. So President Milei will try to get 4 important themes on the extraordinary sessions in January and February, and those 4 themes are the budget for 2026, labor reform, tax reform, and a reform in the law reform in the penal code. Is that the way of saying it?
The penal code.
The penal code. Those are the 4 milestones that he will try to pass as soon as he can.
Is it likely, with the backing of other small right-wing parties, perhaps?
It's very likely. It's very likely.
But you need 50% to pass laws, right?
Yes, but he only needs 15. The Cámara de Diputados, which is the Commons chamber, so to speak, has 257 members, and he and allies, they have 110. So he needs somewhere around 15 more.
Okay, and that's doable.
That's doable. And and the Senate, they're 72, and he's got like 26, so he needs 10 or 11 more. And that's part of the negotiations he started last week with different governors, because the Senate is controlled by the governors, right?
Okay.
And important thing, it's the first time in the last 42 years in which Peronism does not have control of the Senate. First time in the last 42 years.
It's amazing.
And so it's very likely in both chambers.
That's fascinating.
And that's the reason why the equity market shut up the way it did, right? Because
Wish
the
I
thing
had
is,
some shares.
the thing is, I think financial markets were expecting to have a better situation, definitely, in both chambers, but not such an advantageous position. Now reforms are very likely. At least that's those are the numbers, and that's what financial markets are really considering at this point.
In terms of the tax reform, say, are there any specifics that you know of that he wants to do, whether rates are going to come down or fewer rates?
It's an important thing. When people hear about tax reforms, they think it's lowering taxes. Well, in order to lower taxes, you need to lower expenses, right? So, because fiscal deficit is something that we will not have, so you still need to have fiscal surplus. So, it's not necessarily that it's going to be like a lowering of taxes. It's going to be, I would say, a reorganization, and it's going to be a simpler system.
Simplification.
Simplification. there are about 150 different taxes in Argentina.
Crazy, yeah. Just federal taxes, or that's all state and federal taxes?
State and federal taxes. If you get the 5 or 6 bigger ones, you get 90% of the whole
The revenue.
collection,
So just
the revenue,
get rid of the others.
right? So the system's a mess, and it's a mess that does not have much common sense because there are tons of taxes that are not really adding up, and those taxes imply a burden in terms of compliance for all different companies and for individuals. So you really need to get that done. And there's a special tax that's very, I would say, distortive. Is that the correct word? No.
Say distortionary.
Distortionary.
Yeah.
Okay.
Distorting.
Distorting. Es ingresos brutos. And it's like a sales tax.
Ah, yes.
But it's a sales tax on top of at different levels of the chain of production. So it's very.
So it's not a consumption tax.
It's not a consumption tax.
Yeah.
It's very inconvenient, and that's something they will try to change or to modify or. And the problem with that tax is that tax is the main revenue for different provinces.
I see.
So they would have to find a way of getting rid of that and compensate provinces with something that is less messy and at the same time less inconvenient for activity.
Just a question on. For my own benefit, does the federal government fund the provinces or the provinces raise their own tax?
No. They can collect some taxes, but most of the taxes are collected on a federal basis.
Australia is the same.
So, and that's something that, okay, now you have collected, so how you now,
Yes, it's very political.
how do you decide which province is gonna get how much, right?
Yes.
So there's a law passed by in 1994, but it hasn't been has been discussed ever since, and there's no clear rule of how to share that revenue with the provinces, and that's a never-ending issue, right? For the last 30 years. That's la ley de coparticipación, and that's something that I guess they will try to tackle as well, because it places a lot of pressure on different governments, and it's always a problem of transparency in what provinces can really expect from the central government, right? It's as it is today, as it has been for the last 30 years, it's a shady situation always.
Yes. Just on the labour market in Australia, for instance, the labour market's very regulated. The timed lunch breaks, pay rates for different ages, and it's very bad for productivity. My question is the labour market here similarly regulated with all sorts of ridiculous conditions and regulations?
Labor market here, it's not much about regulation; it's about the cost. So, for an employee to get 100 pesos, the employer has to pay 162.
In tax or
different sort of things that this goes for, for healthcare. This
so
goes,
extra 62% is the that's a lot.
So it's not much about regulation. It's much about healthcare. Different. I don't want to get into that now, but it's healthcare is one of the things. Insurances,
yes,
different type of things that end up being extremely expensive. So what happens? 40% of people work in what we call the black market,
informal,
in informal market, right? So
40%. That's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not.
So it's
working.
illegal technically.
Yeah.
Illegally.
It's illegal, but 40% of the people that work are illegal, and
So just
you know,
cash. Pay cash.
they pay cash, or they get part of the salary the right way,
Yes,
a part of the salary in cash,
Yes.
and that's
It's fascinating.
a situation that has a lot of contingencies for the companies, liabilities.
That's right. That's right.
Contingencies, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's liabilities for for the owner of a company, for the employer, contingent liabilities for the employer, some liabilities for the employee as well. And what happens is that, so let's say someone makes 1,000, it doesn't really matter, 1,000 a month. So if they get fired, they would start, they would go to court and say, I was making 5,000.
I see. Okay.
And you know what? They get compensated as if they were collecting 5,000.
Okay.
And that's not a rare occasion. That's the rule. So what happens? Nobody wants to hire anyone.
Okay.
So if companies decide to hire someone, it's because they really need to. So companies choose to hire the minimum that they need, and it's a problem because you have less labor than what's optimal, and at the same time, one trial can bankrupt a small company.
Yes.
Because they have to compensate so much for an employee that they can go bankrupt.
Fascinating. So is there a minimum wage in Argentina that's uniform across the whole country, or it doesn't matter anyway because it's all informal?
I don't really think that the minimum wage it's an issue here. I would say. Now I would say the problem is all these liabilities, all these costs it's really expensive. So if someone has to choose between setting up a company in Argentina or Brazil or Mexico or some Peru, and they say, okay, how much it will cost me to hire someone, and it's really expensive to hire someone in Argentina, and then it's almost impossible to estimate how the cost of firing someone, because you don't know how much it will cost you to fire someone.
Okay. This is the court issue, you said.
Because of the court issue, it's completely uncertain.
Okay. So, what about within the first 3 months, the first 6 months of employment?
It doesn't matter.
Oh, really? It doesn't matter.
It doesn't.
You can have someone for a week, and the court
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
And someone can claim that they have, mental issues or illnesses that they don't exist. You can imagine anything that you want, and you will be short of reality. I know people that have employees that were leave of absence because they were ill, and they found them running in the park. So are you getting better? Yes, I'm getting better.
Yes,
that's or that they claim they have psychological distress, and they still have to pay them for 1 year or 2 years, and they're not even showing up at work.
1 to 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So the judiciary, the judges are obviously left wing.
You can find someone and you can have them film on tape stealing from you, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You will have to compensate them.
Wow.
Because
the law says this.
Because they will claim I don't know what, but I know for a fact. A friend of mine had a food provider, and they had some employees stealing. They were caught on camera,
It's incredible.
And there was no way. They had to compensate them anyway.
Amazing. Is he in Buenos Aires? I should talk to him.
Yeah.
It's a good story. Does he speak English then? Probably.
Yeah, he's my business partner.
Okay, all right, well maybe I'll talk to you about that. One last question, a philosophical question.
Yeah.
Why is it that Argentina, this beautiful country, stunning city, with so many resources, why did it become, to use your phrase, become so messed up? Far more messed up than Chile, far more messed up than Brazil even, which is crazy country too. What happened? Why? It was so rich 100 years ago. It was so rich.
Yeah, I would say the decline starts with populism, and populism in this country has started with Perón.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can convince people that they have the legal right to get some things without working,
Mm-hmm.
that's a very interesting proposition, and you can get many votes with that, and yeah, and they start to believe that they think they are entitled to a series of things, of rights that nobody knows who's gonna pay them. So we decided to print money to pay those rights, and we have become the champions of money printing. At a rate that is really hard to imagine.
Like Germany almost in the Weimar Republic.
Probably. If you go back to 1930, our currency lost 16 zeros, right? So it's 13, but now it's 1,000 pesos. That you could say, if you consider that instead of 1,000 pesos you could have one, because 1,000 pesos is not even $1, you could claim that we lost 16 zeros. Why? Because it's like pretending you can fight ignorance just by giving up university diploma, saying, okay, you're to kill ignorance, like just gifting diplomas of university, and that's what we did.
So well, it seems like Milei has made some inroads into changing people's minds. Thankfully, this is such an excellent speaker, such a great communicator. I wish I could understand Spanish so I could see what he's saying, but it looks good. It looks very good. There was a previous president, I think, Macri, who tried to do similar things, and he failed ultimately. Presumably, you think Milei won't fail. So, what is the difference? Is it the charisma of Milei?
It was conviction. Macri never really had the guts to kill fiscal deficit, basically.
Yeah.
So, and at the point at which he decided to go deeper into cut spending, it was too late. It was his last year. So it's not only what you're doing, it's the point in time in which you're doing that. So when he decided to go and really go hard on some measures, it was already too late. And Milei got into office in December. In January, he had fiscal surplus.
Yeah, it was incredibly quick.
Okay?
It was incredibly quick.
Okay, 20 days.
Amazing.
Well, 20, okay, you can say 50 days because it's January. His first whole month in office, he had fiscal surplus.
So he sacked like 50,000 public servants or something.
It wasn't only that, but it was
very impressive.
Yeah, it was 15 points of GDP. It's
extraordinary lesson for the whole world that you can cut and get growth. Because Keynesians, as you know, they don't like that. They say you can't.
But at the same time, what happened was that the state was so big, it was consuming all the credit and all the resources of the country. So when you get a smaller state, and when he got into office, government spending to GDP was somewhere around 45%. Now it's 35. He wants to get it to 25.
Okay, and that includes the states. That's like everything.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that'll be very impressive. It's a lot more than that in Australia. So I think there's some lessons for us there. Well, look, we'll leave it there. You've been very generous with your time. Thank you so much. And I should have said earlier that Miguel is the CEO of Carta Financiera. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And we're sitting in the beautiful offices, I think, of that company, I think. So look, thank you so much. I hope we stay in touch. And,
Okay, sure.
Thank you.